Welcome back into the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Reaction Show. I am Steven Serda, joined as always by my guy, Rocky Magaña. Kramer Sansone in the background, keeping this thing moving. We're going to keep things short and tight this evening on the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Reaction Show as the Chiefs fall to the Denver Broncos 24-9. They're 6-2 on the season, ahead of a massive matchup against the Miami Dolphins in Germany next week. And we've kind of been circling this game on the calendar and talking about it all year. And it really feels like the Chiefs are kind of looking past the Denver Broncos today and looking ahead to that trip to Germany and this massive matchup against two premier NFL teams. But Sunday was about as rough as it can get for the Kansas City Chiefs. Just an awful, awful performance against a bad Denver Broncos football team. And I know their win over the Broncos, Rocky, a couple of weeks ago wasn't exactly impressive, but this is a team that this is a team that you should be able to score on, and to only muster 9 points, to turn the football over like crazy. The offensive line was terrible today. Mahomes was under pressure the entire day and actually suffered a hand injury. He had to get his hand taped up at one point. The Chiefs suffered some other injuries on the defensive side of the ball. Like, just all around, it could not have gotten much worse today for the Kansas City Chiefs.
I mean, my gosh, I thought Day of the Dead was on November 2nd, but the way the Chiefs offense looked today, it was today, Steven Serda. Sky Moore is not an NFL quality wide receiver. Like, it's not his fault. He just is not an NFL wide receiver, and they need to stop putting him on the field. The Chiefs played like a team that was looking past the Broncos today. They played like a team that looked like they were going to win their 17th straight game against the Broncos. It looked like a team that knew that they didn't have to play their best game in order to win, and they played horrible. The offense looked like garbage. This wasn't the defense's fault today. The offense played horrible. Like, and if you're going into this game, coming in the trade deadline, thinking the Chiefs have enough to make a run at the Super Bowl, I mean, you don't want to be like sky is falling and being over an alarmist here, but they don't have enough. Because here's the problem: is in the past, the Chiefs had enough offense to overcome mistakes. Maybe not as many mistakes as today, because today was a bury the tape, mistake riddled game from beginning to finish, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Like, Mahomes was sick, but that's not why they lost today. Mahomes played bad. Like, even if Mahomes is healthy, he played bad. The wide receivers played poorly. Like the offensive line didn't block. Like, it was a bad offensive game. And if you think the Chiefs have enough going into the trade deadline, they don't, for the simple fact that they don't have enough offense to overcome mistakes like they have in years past. And in years past, they find ways to win games like this. Like, they always have one game a year where they really play like garbage and they end up losing.
Yeah.
But in years past, they win this game. Yeah, Colts game.
I think this game was
this is worse. Like, they don't have enough this year.
So I was thinking about this as this game was unfolding, and I was like, man, they just don't have it today. Like, it never at any point in this contest seemed like the Chiefs were going to win this football game. Like, that's just how bad of a performance it was. They could not get anything going offensively. I already mentioned Mahomes taking hits, taking way too many hits from that offensive line, especially against a Broncos pass rush that hasn't been anything that you need to worry about this season. But at the end of the day, they're still 6-2. You're still easily going to win your division, in my mind. You're still easily a contender out of the AFC, if not one of the top teams across the NFL. Like, I'm not reading into this thing saying like, oh no, it's all unraveling for the Kansas City Chiefs. But this continues to highlight the issues that we've been talking about over the first 7 weeks of the season. Now, today was the absolute worst that we have seen. And like you mentioned, they have these kinds of performances every single year. So I'm not going to read too much into this performance against a division rival that you just played 2 weeks ago. And, and they're kind of incentivized to come out and give their best stuff because some of these guys might get traded by Tuesday's deadline. And, they know about Patrick Mahomes being 12-0 and the Chiefs 16-game win streak against the Broncos and all that stuff. All of those things play a factor into this. But today was the first time this season where I was like, maybe I'm just lying to myself about this offense. Maybe I'm so used to Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid just making it work that I assume that they will. And maybe we are finally kind of seeing that if you shut down Travis Kelce, no one else in the wide receiver room is reliable. And we saw that throughout the entire day today. And Kelsey still winds up having a decent game, but by his standards, not something that we're used to from him. But that's a product of Denver being like, okay, we're just going to have guys on Kelsey all the time. We're going to try to shadow Kelsey all the time and make everybody else beat us, which is what every team should do against the Chiefs until they can figure out how to get some of these guys to step up. I know Rashee Rice had a bad drop, and he comes away with a decent stat line, and it would have looked a lot better if he makes that catch, because I think he could have picked up another 20 yards on that drop. But just generally, we're 8 weeks into this thing, and I don't really feel any better about the Chiefs offense. I thought that they could build off of last week's performance, but now I'm sitting here thinking like maybe the Chargers defense is just really that bad. And maybe the Chiefs offense is just kind of average, and they're going to have big games. And then when they go up against good teams, they're going to struggle sometimes. And the Denver Broncos certainly aren't a good team, but the Chiefs didn't bring their A game today. And I'm not feeling great about this game against the Miami Dolphins next week. We're not going to get into that tonight, but just you couldn't have played a worse football game today for if you were the Kansas City Chiefs.
No, and like the Chiefs, you could tell the Chiefs were trying not to put anything on tape ahead of the Miami game. Like the coaching staff thought that they could just come out and call a vanilla game and that the Chiefs were good enough to win the game, because that's what they did 2 weeks ago, and it was good enough and it was fine. But you were playing on the road this time. You're playing against a team that was sick and tired of losing against you, and you still should have won it. Like they just did not show up today. And you're right. Like, yeah, sure. There's some bright signs from last week's game. Rashee Rice has some juice. Like, he's a good player. Travis Kelce is still a really good player. But guess what? Sky Moore's still not good enough. MVS still not good enough. Justin Watson is still Justin Watson. Blake Bell is a backup tight end. Isaiah Pacheco, not the best vision in the world, but runs really hard. And then Jerick McKinnon and Clyde Edwards-Helaire are themselves, but not enough. Like there's nothing about this offense that is scary aside from Patrick Mahomes doing something freaky every now and again. And then Travis Kelce. You take Travis Kelce away, and then all you have to do is defend against the once out of every 8 or 9 plays of Mahomes doing something amazing. Like roll the dice against that every single day of the week, because they're not going to be able to string enough amazing plays together back after back after back on a consistent basis against a really good team. Now, I know that I know I'm going to be proven wrong next week. I know that Andy Reid's going to roll out an awesome game plan, and the offense is going to look a lot better, and all of this is going to be for naught. But this game still counts. This still counts in the win-loss column. Yeah, the Chiefs are still going to win the division. Yeah, at the end of the day, call me in week 17 and this game's not going to matter. I'm sure. That's wow. I'm sure that's the case. But today, this game mattered, and the Chiefs just decided not to show up at all. Like they gave the most subpar performance we've seen in a really long time.
Yeah, and it's a long NFL season. Things are going to change dramatically from now until the end of the year. And the San Francisco 49ers a few weeks ago, undefeated and looking dominant, like the best team in football, all of a sudden they've dropped 3 games in a row. Like, the NFL is weird. It's hard to win on a weekly basis, and we see things like this every single week. So I'm not worried that they lost to the Denver Broncos. I'm more worried about the fact that we're 8 weeks into this thing, and we still have no idea who can consistently make plays on offense outside of Travis Kelce. Like, we still have, it is Rashee Rice, I guess, but he's a rookie who is still in a rotational role. His snaps have been increasing a little bit, but he's still in a rotational role. And you mentioned Sky Moore. He just doesn't have it, man. And I hate to judge guys this early into their careers, but for a player who couldn't get on the field as a rookie, this year steps into a huge role in the offense and has done absolutely nothing with it. Rocky, we're almost halfway through the regular season. Sky Moore has not been productive at all for the Kansas City Chiefs offense. And today on 4th down, Mahomes takes a shot to the end zone And Sky actually beat Patrick Surtain. And I got annoyed on the broadcast because they were like, oh, Surtain with the great play. No, Sky just didn't make the play. Surtain was out of position. Like that ball, Mahomes put the ball in the perfect spot. Sky lost it because he can't track footballs, and he just did not make the play. That should have been a touchdown for the Chiefs. And it's just happening on a weekly basis where we see him just out there not doing anything for the Chiefs offensively. And I don't know if this is like we got to get to the bye so we can kind of tweak things and revamp things for the back half of the season. But Sky Moore does not belong on the field as much as he has been on the field for the Kansas City Chiefs offensively. MVS, I'm tired of MVS. Like, I understand he came off of a big game. MVS should not be playing like 70% of the snaps on a weekly basis because he does one thing and he's not even very good at the one thing that he does. Like that last interception that Mahomes threw where he just lofts it up and just trying to keep anything alive and just heaves a prayer down the field. I was like, oh, that's getting picked as soon as I saw it was MVS. MVS doesn't make contested catches, Rocky. What can you think of a time that Marquez Valdez-Scantling has ever gone up and gotten a football and won with a defender all over him? Like that was an easy pick. He doesn't make those kinds of plays. You don't have anybody who is reliable outside of Rashee Rice, and Rashee Rice is a rookie who drops the football a lot. Like the pass catchers through 8 weeks are not looking great, and they've got to get something figured out. They've got to get more consistency. And I still think that they can put things together offensively, that they can be more functional than we've seen them be for the most part through 8 weeks. But at some point, we also have to acknowledge that this is probably just who they are this season.
100%. Like that's the whole thing is that they have like replacement level wide receivers. They have an ascending player in Rashee Rice at wide receiver. And aside from that, every single other guy on this offense is either a jag or below. Like that's the honest to God truth. Like you could replace any guy aside from Rashee Rice in this wide receiver core with any other offense's number 3 or number 4 wide receiver. You wouldn't know the difference.
I wasn't in on them trading at the deadline. I don't think they have the money for it. I don't see it happening. But now I'm like, call up the Patriots and see what they want for Kendrick Bourne. Kendrick Bourne keeps making plays on a weekly basis. Kendrick Bourne can go win contested catches. Like Kendrick Bourne would add an element to the offense that they simply don't have.
Like who's the most basic jag guy? Alex Erickson. Say Alex Erickson for sake. Like who on this offense and this wide receiver core is better than Alex Erickson? Maybe Rashee Rice. Like that's what you got. You got Rashee Rice and a bunch of Alex Erickson quality players. That's not going to win you a Super Bowl come Super Bowl time. And you have the best quarterback in the world who elevates the talent of all the other offensive players around him. And you have a Hall of Fame tight end in Travis Kelce. And you got a really good backup tight end in Blake Bell. But guess what? When you're down by 2 scores late in the fourth quarter and you got to move the ball down the field fast, you need wide receivers that can stretch the field and get open and get chunk gains. And we don't have it. Like Mahomes was holding on to the ball forever today because there's just nobody open downfield.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's the most concerning thing is that's been the most consistent part of the offense this season is him holding on to the football way too long because nobody's getting open downfield. Like that's been the most consistent thing you can point to that's wrong with the Chiefs offense. Guys aren't getting open, and it's making Mahomes hold on to the ball too long. And today, the offensive line wasn't good either, so he was under pressure and having to hold on to the ball way too long because there was nobody open downfield. And and he took several hits today. Like that left hand injury, I mean, it's not his throwing hand, which is great, but you don't want your quarterback to get hurt ever. And like, especially not in a meaningless game against the Denver Broncos.
Well, yeah, and how many times this year have you seen after Mahomes threw the ball that he's looking at the wide receiver saying, come back to the ball? Like, come back to the ball. It seems like at least 3 to 4 times every game he's getting on the wide receiver for not working back to the ball. Like, these are not things that you learn when you're in the NFL.
Today.
These are basic things. Yeah, this is basic football. Work back to the ball, get in front of the defender, get body positioning. Like every single playbook like when you have like when they're running the play and they're practicing, they're talking through it, they literally will tell you where your body position should be. And if you're coming back to the ball, they say make sure you get your inside shoulder in front of the wide receiver, in front of the defender. Give your let the quarterback see your numbers, come back towards them, and give them a target to throw to. These guys are just sitting there waiting for the ball to come to them, and then throwing their hands up if they get touched at all. Like it's horrible. And here's the thing is, like, you don't want to, like, at some point you got to look at it and you say, okay, when we look at our position coaches, almost every single one of them is like an old war veteran of a position coaches, right? Except for Connor Embry, the wide receiver coach, is his very first year as a position coach. And if the receivers are playing this bad and he had this green of a group of wide receivers to develop, was it a job that was too big for him? Is he out of his depth right now as a position coach? He was an offensive assistant previously, did very well there, got promoted to wide receiver coach this year. And what is he? And we're not seeing the fruits of it. So at some point, you got to ask, do the Chiefs have the right guy in that role?
Yeah, I mean, Andy's not particularly good at evaluating his own staff most of the time. So I don't think Connor Embry is going anywhere after his first year with the Chiefs as their wide receiver coach. But yeah, it's a red flag. Obviously, I still think the Chiefs are Super Bowl contenders. I still think they're one of the best teams in all of football, but this was a huge letdown game. And the red flags that we've been talking about consistently over the first half of the season are still there, and they don't appear to be getting any better, which is concerning when you think about the fact that, yeah, you've got the Miami Dolphins and you have a bye week, but the back half of their schedule is the tough part of their schedule. So they've got to figure some things out here, because this kind of performance, obviously not going to get it done against a team like the Philadelphia Eagles or the Cincinnati Bengals or the Buffalo Bills. These top tier NFL teams, and the Bills have been inconsistent. Bengals have been up and down. Like, that's the way the NFL goes. But the issue is, and Patrick Mahomes hasn't been special this season, but he's still been good. Like, he's still been Patrick Mahomes. But I think that we're finally seeing that for the first time, it's just not all working around him the way that we're used to working. And that's having a dramatic impact on the offense. Now, I'll remind you guys, we'll get into your comments right at the end of the show, hashtag AP Rapid Reaction. After the commercial break, if you're listening to us on the podcast, make sure you stick around for all the post-game press conferences. I'd imagine they're not going to be very long this evening. They never are after a loss like this. But before we get out of here, Rocky, I do want to talk about the Chiefs defensively, because there's going to be, I think, some conversations this week about the Chiefs defense and about the fact that, they just gave up 24 points to the Denver Broncos, but like, the defense played well again today. I was impressed with the defense. Yeah, they got called for a lot of penalties. L'Jarius Sneed had kind of a rough day, but overall, they sacked Russell Wilson multiple times. They were generating a lot of pressure, but the Chiefs kept turning the football over and putting the defense in bad situations, and they just simply couldn't overcome that today. Like, this one is certainly not on the defense. I'm not going to put it on them. I still think that they are a top 5 defense in the NFL, and I think that they played really well today, other than the fact that they kept getting penalties and the Chiefs offense kept putting them in really bad positions.
Yeah, L'Jarius Sneed had a rough day at the office. Honestly, aside from his kick blocks, so did Justin Reed. The pass rush was awesome. Like, George Karlaftis and Charles Omenihu were complete game wreckers. Mike Dana, he's gonna get a bag at the end of the season if he keeps playing this way. Like the front four did their job today. And you got to be really scared at this point with the linebackers being as banged up as they are. Nick Bolton's already out. And then at one point you had Willie Gay and Drew Tranquil both off the field with injuries. Like if you got Leo Chanel and Cochran as your two healthy linebackers,
That's right.
like, you're not feeling real happy about that, especially in pass coverage. Like, you're looking at running like nickel or dime as your base at that point just to cover guys. Like, I wouldn't be surprised they bring Brian Cook in as a linebacker if these other guys can't go. And so the pass rush was awesome today, though. Like, hats off. Karlaftis continues to show that he's developed into a legitimate NFL pass rusher. Charles Omenihu shows that he's worth the cash. Chris Jones wasn't it's two straight kind of quiet games for Chris Jones.
I think it's a product of offensive lines are just like, we're just going to put 2-3 guys on Chris Jones and try to contain him and see if the other guys can beat us. And the other guys are winning still for the Chiefs defensive line, which is good. That's what you want to see when they're trying to shut down Chris Jones with 2 to 3 offensive linemen at a time.
Yeah, which is fine. Like I'll take that any day of the week. This isn't on the defense. Like that's the end of the day, is that you'll say 24 points. But I mean, they played on a lot of short fields today. I mean, McCole Hardman's fumble, you have MVS's fumble, you have all of Mahomes' interceptions and both Mahomes' interceptions and his fumbles. I mean, what the Chiefs had 5 turnovers today, right? I mean, come on, the fact that they only scored 24 points and the Chiefs had 5 turnovers, like that's the problem right there. Like you have 5 turnovers in a game, like you got to clean it up. Like that's that. Like you're professional football players.
And this comes off of, I think after last week's performance, it was the Chiefs were ranked like top 10 DVOA and like offense, defense, and special teams. And so I kind of felt like this kind of performance was coming because they have one of these every year. And then once they start turning the football over early in the game, it was like, where's the special teams turnover? Where's the special teams turnover coming from? And then McCole whiffs that punt. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. Like there it is. That's like that is kind of predictable about the Chiefs. And that's also like, there's going to be a lot of people who were praising the move for McCole Hardman last week, who are probably going to be really critical of it this week and say, see, that's just not enough. McCole can't be the only move that you make before the trade deadline. And like, we know exactly what they were getting in McCole Hardman. That's the McCole Hardman experience. Like last week, Mahomes throws that interception where McCole made absolutely no effort to try to knock the ball away from the defender. Like this week, he whiffs on a punt. He's an explosive kick returner who's going to make plays that way for you this season. And that's why you went out and traded for him. But he's also an inconsistent player. That's who he's been his entire career. And I agree. Like, I don't want that to be the only thing that they do before the trade deadline, but I don't think that they have the money to go make a significant move at the trade deadline. They'd have to move some cash around somehow. And I don't know enough about cap space. Maybe I have to talk to Jared or John, our cap experts here at Arrowhead Pride, to figure out how the Chiefs could do something like that. But I tend to think that this is the team and they're just saying, we got to figure it out. We got to make this thing work. And, I'd rather that they lose this game to the Denver Broncos than lose next week to the Miami Dolphins. Like, hopefully this kind of kicks them into gear and they get it together ahead of that big matchup next week. Because obviously Tyreek Hill is going to be just unbearable if the Dolphins smoke the Chiefs or something next week. But I would much rather they win that football game than win this one, because at least I know there's no consequence to losing to the Denver Broncos. I know that what it would require for the Chiefs to lose to the Denver Broncos is them playing garbage. And they played like garbage today. Like they were a terrible football team today, at least offensively and on special teams. And that's how you lose games like this. But I don't think there's a significant consequence to losing this game. I think losing to the Dolphins is much more consequential in the grand scheme of things next week. You're muted.
100% agree. The Dolphins are the bigger game. Like this game's not going to matter at the end of the season. The Chiefs are still going to run away with this division. The Broncos are going to lose a lot of games for this year, and then the Chargers aren't going to catch them. The Raiders aren't going to catch them. Like that's just the simple fact of the matter. And people want to like listen. I don't think the Chiefs have enough on offense right now. I think they need to improve. But the other side of that is, you got to think, if you're Brett Veach, you got to think long-term with the Chiefs here. You have limited draft resources. And if you're going to trade for somebody, you're trading draft resources. Like the Chiefs are going to be Super Bowl contenders every single year they have Patrick Mahomes. They're not going to win the Super Bowl every single year. But do you really want to give up like significant draft resources to go out and get a guy like a Mike Evans or something like that that's going to be like a 10-game rental? You know what I mean?
I'd give up the Chiefs' late first-round pick for Mike Evans right now.
I don't know, but that's the thing, is because then you're giving up possible 4 to 5 years of control of a possible wide receiver that ends up being equally as good. down the line, right? Like you have to think long game about this. Like you want to be able to make a move and be competitive this year and take your best shot at winning a Super Bowl this year without sacrificing your ability to build through the draft. Because with Mahomes' contract, you're gonna have to build through the draft like the Chiefs have. And you're going to have to continue to hit on draft picks, and so it's I mean, it's a yin and yang there.
Again, Chiefs fall 24-9 to the Denver Broncos. They're still 6-2 on the season. They head to Germany to take on the Miami Dolphins next week, but just the ugliest possible game we could expect to see from this Kansas City Chiefs game. And it kind of felt like they were due for one of these. They've had some up and down performances this season, and we're just used to at least one of these kinds of games a year. I hope that they don't play like that next week against the Miami Dolphins, because it could be a very rough morning in Germany. But this is just the kind of game that they had today. And there's going to be a lot made of this game, probably. I don't think we should read that much into it. I don't think that this highlights anything that we didn't already know about the Chiefs, other than they just didn't show up to play today. But let's get some comments and observations before we get out of here. I'm done talking about the Denver Broncos. I'm very happy that I don't have to talk about them the rest of the season, Rocky. But as from Justin, as crazy as this sounds, the Chiefs receiver troubles are worse than we thought. No number one wide receiver in that room. Coverage sacks were plentiful. I mean, yeah, but that's what we've been talking about all season. And I really, really like Rashee Rice. I think Rashee Rice looks like he has a chance to really become a stud for the Chiefs offensively. But he's a rookie, and they're bringing him along slow, and he's got a really limited route tree right now. And he's got a really limited role where, they're basically only putting him in as kind of like this slot wide receiver. I know he's been getting a few more snaps on the outside, but they're basically putting him in the slot and saying, we're just going to hit you over the middle on short to intermediate passes. And we're going to let you use your explosiveness and your tackle breaking ability. And that's basically his entire role in the offense. We haven't seen it expanded yet. Maybe it does get expanded post the Chiefs bye week, but this might just be what he is in the offense this season as a rookie. I don't know if it's going to get any bigger than it really has at this point.
Yeah, I mean, this just reaffirms the fact that the Chiefs need an X and a Z receiver in the offseason. Like they have like Rashee Rice is a good big slot. Like he excels there. Don't try to make him an outside wide receiver. Keep him in the slot where he's playing well. But then you gotta get guys on the outside. And I wouldn't say that it's worse than we thought. It's as bad as we thought. Like it's not good. This is the worst wide receiving core that Mahomes has had in Kansas City. And I'm talking about a wide receiving core that had Byron Pringle and Demarcus Robinson playing significant snaps. Like this is worse than Demarcus Robinson level wide receiver play. Like that's thinking that is horrible.
And, all that preseason hope around Justin Ross is gone now as he goes on the commissioner exempt list this week. Don't know if he's going to be back with the Kansas City Chiefs this season or not, based on his legal situation, what's going on with him off the field. But that's already another body down in the wide receiver room, and a wide receiver room that we were once hopeful would develop and turn into something. It just kind of seems like that's probably not going to happen this season. From Alex, I just don't get why we go away from the run so quick. Pop is averaging 5 yards a carry, then they just stopped running him. I think that's the most frustrating part for me in both these matchups against the Denver Broncos, where, you saw what the Miami Dolphins did to them, but it isn't just them. Like the Broncos run defense has been legitimately bad all season. And neither game plan from Andy Reid was like, maybe we should run the football more. Maybe we should lean into the run. And I would love to ask Andy, and maybe I'll ask Pete Sweeney, the editor-in-chief of Arrowhead Pride, to ask this to Andy Reid this week. But like, what goes into the game plan in deciding like whether or not we're going to be run heavy or pass heavy? Because I know traditionally they want to be pass heavy, but like they ran the football a lot against the Jets, and they haven't really done it against anybody else. Like, and it's really frustrating because I'm kind of like you, Rocky. Like I like Isaiah Pacheco. I love the energy that he brings, and he can rip off these big chunk gains, and he runs really, really hard. But I don't look at Isaiah Pacheco and say he's like an elite runner of the football who needs 20 touches a game. But in favorable matchups, you should lean into it a little bit and give him some opportunities. And the Chiefs just didn't even try today.
Yeah, and I mean, the Chiefs were playing from behind. I think that's what happened today. Is the Chiefs were playing from behind the entire game. Like they dug themselves in an early hole. And yeah, it wasn't a super deep hole until the fourth quarter. but they were trying to play out of it the entire day, and so they were trying to pass their way out of it. They're trying to lean on their best player, and they should have gone more balanced. I mean, like Isaiah Pacheco, he's actually he's not a superstar, but against this matchup, he was being productive. And I think that Andy, I think a little bit to his detriment, when he's playing from behind, leans on what he's comfortable with, which is the passing game. Like he's more comfortable as a passer than a calling pass plays than running plays, which is why it was so impressive last year in the Super Bowl that the Chiefs came from behind via the run game, in the second half of the Super Bowl. I just think that that's Andy's default, and sometimes he needs to take a deep breath, take a step back, and say, you know what? Let's just pound the rock here, try to regain control of the offense. We're turning it over too much, and let's try to get some momentum and hit them in the mouth and draw their secondary up against the line a little bit, so that maybe we can get some passes over the top, and free Kelsey up a little bit. I mean, if you got Kelsey getting bracketed all day, and you have people playing your wide receiver soft and they can't get open, we'll run the ball up the middle a couple of times and make them play honest, And so I don't know. That's how Andy calls the game though sometimes.
Yeah. And, I think the Chiefs win by throwing the ball. Like, obviously, you win by the ball being in Patrick Mahomes' hands and him having an opportunity to make big plays offensively. But yeah, sometimes I just want the Chiefs, especially with the way this offensive line is constructed. Like, I think I would really enjoy occasionally if they just do what the Eagles do. And they're like, yeah, things aren't clicking right now for us in the passing game. We're just going to run it down your throat until you can stop it, until you prove you can stop it. And then we're going to use that to set up some deep shots down the field to AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. And the Chiefs just don't do that. And I feel like it could really benefit them offensively to lean into that here and there. But rough day. It's not the end of the world. Chiefs still very, very good football team, still 6-2, still at the top of the AFC West, and still one of the absolute best teams in the entire NFL. They just didn't have it on Sunday against the Denver Broncos. It happens sometimes, but just kind of one of those frustrating performances that I think we're all kind of used to from this Kansas City Chiefs team early in the season now. But he's Rocky Magaña. You can follow him on Twitter at Rocky Magaña. I'm Steven Serda. That's where you can find me. You can follow Kramer at Kramer Talks. As always, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review everything that we're doing right here on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network, and stay locked into arrowheadpride.com for all the latest on the Kansas City Chiefs. I will be back first thing tomorrow morning with a fresh edition of the Arrowhead Pride Report with Pete Sweeney. We'll talk to you.